Hi everybody, Kurt here. Welcome back to the channel. To say it's uncommon to do an accident investigation into your own fatal crash would be something of an understatement. I think we can all agree on that. Over the weekend, Beyond ATC released its traffic injection, which was a much-awaited patch that the community was really excited about. I knew everyone and their mom was going to be putting together a video about it, and the vast majority of those people would be doing it in airliners. I wanted to cover it from a general aviation point of view, so I loaded up the A2A Comanche and set up a short flight from Van Nuys, California to Santa Barbara, California. It's a short hop, but it's fairly busy airspace, and I figured it would do a good job of showing off BATC's new feature. And it did. But thanks to my own error, none of the Beyond ATC audio was captured. And thanks also to Beyond ATC and a fair helping of my own errors, I ended up dead. Some of you may wonder why I don't lean harder on my real-world flying experience in these videos. Well, it's because that was 20 years ago. And with time and age, those skills and habits have eroded. While I have good core knowledge, I'm not qualified to advise anyone, so I don't. And the failure cascade that you're about to watch is good evidence of that. I want to point out that this failure was a function of the simulation. It's not something I pre-planned. I was genuinely caught off guard, as a pilot in this situation would have been. The incident escalating to fatal was due to a hardware failure that I will explain as we watch, but all of it could happen in a real flight, so I thought all of it was good learning. Let's get started. Being a little aggressive here, because I know we're pretty close to the airport. It's actually just off to the left over there. Kind of want to get down here to 1,000. As we join the video here, we're talking to Santa Barbara approach. We've already been cleared down to 1,000 feet. We're expecting the 1.5 left visual. Beyond ATC is not particularly good at visual approaches, and in particular, Santa Barbara has a kind of constrained approach on this runway because of these mountains that you can see here off to the right of me. They've just got a couple miles to squeeze you in there, and it really troubles Beyond ATC. I should point out here also, you don't hear the conversation from my airplane to the ATC or from the ATC to us. This is because I was using Beyond ATC's built-in responses rather than talking to ATC myself, as I'm pretty rusty. But I'll keep you up to date on what got said via this commentary. Left to 220. The instruction there was left to 220, which you can hear me muttering back. At this point, the airport's visible there on the left, and I was expecting to get a report in sight or something like that and then to continue the approach, but that didn't happen. It's flying us right past the runway. Okay, so that was a pretty big screw up on its part. Should have just cleared me for the visual. At this point, the controller calls left to 120, still attempting vectors. 20, let's see how it decides to work this out. Basically telling us to make a 180. This is not going to work. Okay, well, let's see what it does. Go ahead and re-engage the altitude hold because I think this game is going to go on for a while. At this point, I finally get the report field in sight call. Well, I do have the field in sight, can't lie. And of course, as I said there, I do, have the field in sight, but I pushed the wrong button for the response. Wrong button. Saying that I would advise, and at that point it decided that it needed to do a go-around, which it probably should have decided, 4 minutes ago, but here we are. My runway heading, okay. Gonna be about 150. So at this point I set up 150, climb to 3800, I'm cleaning up the plane, gear up, flaps up. This is one of the procedures I dislike about Santa Barbara. If you're on either of the 15s, VFR or IFR, they will fly you out about 5 miles offshore. And at 3,800 feet, 5 miles offshore, in a single-engine airplane is nerve-wracking because there's no certainty that you could glide back by the time you made a 180 if something went horribly wrong. This part of their procedure always made me uncomfortable. It was very warm in Southern California this weekend, and temperatures were a factor on this flight. The eagle-eyed among you may be noticing that my oil temperature is increasing kind of rapidly, and this is not something I noticed during this climb out, and I believe it was an important factor in all the things that would happen in a little bit here. I've gotten used to flight simulator planes that never have failures, and the A2A Comanche is one that will, so you do have to be mindful of these things, and this was a good reminder. And at this point, I'll hand you over to flying pilot Kurt, who is going to complain a little bit about visual approaches not really working great yet in Beyond ATC. And to be clear, I've seen this problem before. It just kind of it gets you in close, and it doesn't think ahead quite far enough. Like the turn radiuses don't make any sense, or in this case, it just kind of got talking to another plane there, and during that time, it hadn't cleared us to do anything, so we flew right through the approach. I'm going to clip forward here in a second because nothing happens for a bit. When we come back, I will have already received an instruction to take a heading of about 075, which is turning us square and getting us headed back the other direction to try again. And rejoining the flight, we're at 3,800 feet now. 075 is the heading. Things are about to start going wrong. So I will leave you to watch how I handled this, and I will describe my thinking after the fact. I think I damaged the engine. Oil pressure. Alright, well that's great. I love when that happens out here over the water. Okay, getting the prop to minimum. We're going to try and extend the glide as much as possible. No way to declare an emergency. I'm turning direct to the field. So I'm going to go direct to land. I don't believe we're going to make the field. Figure something out. Santa Barbara has a bit of a beach, but on a hot summer day it's going to be crowded there, so we don't want to kill a bunch of people. That's not really an option. It's cut off. Doing some memory items here. I'm not going to get the checklist out. What else we got? Electronics off in a minute. Unlatch the door. Can't do that. There we go. Alright, what do we got out here? Anything? Pretty built up area. I think we might have to ditch in the water. I'm not sure. There's just really no good options here. Those beaches would be too crowded. Alright. Best glide, which I should have said a while ago. Autopilot off. think we have an emergency gyro on this thing, so. Lost some altitude there because I wasn't paying attention. We're going to be ditching in the water. We'll keep the landing gear up. Let it flaps in. As to shore as we reasonably can. But Kurt, what was that crazy noise, and where was the money shot? You can't just cut there. Well, let's discuss how we got to that point, and what my decision making was along the way. One of the things we see in this recording that I didn't notice in real time was the loss of fuel flow. This could have been an indication of the fuel pump failing, in which case I might have been able to switch to the electric fuel pump and possibly have restored power. But I was convinced that due to the oil pressure loss and the temperature that I had blown my engine and a restart wasn't possible. At that point, I started going through a few memory items just to kind of get a glide established and get us pointed in the right direction. Honestly, that was the right decision, but right after that, I should have got the checklist out. The power loss in flight checklist for this plane says airspeed to 105, fuel selector to the fullest tank, fuel pump on. That was missed. Mixture to full rich. I didn't do that because I believed we were dead. Carb heat was already on, and number 5 is to turn it on. Primer in and locked, magnetos check, engine gauges check. At that point, if no fuel pressure, you're to try an alternate tank. But none of those steps were followed, as I was convinced that the engine had blown. In retrospect, I should have run that checklist, and it's possible we could have almost had a simple fuel pump problem that could have saved the flight. Worthy of note would be that in real life it would have been more obvious if we had an engine blow versus a fuel problem. This would have been obvious because of noise, because of smell, because of lots of other things. But those clues aren't always true in real life, and they're never true in Flight Simulator. So really the best answer would have been just to pull out the checklist and do it after the memory item. Doing memory items first can really save your bacon sometimes, but they are to be used with the checklist and not instead of the checklist. This was my failure. So we don't want to kill a bunch of people. Not really an option. It's cut off. So at this point, I've kind of committed to a ditch. I'm getting fuel and whatnot shut off, getting any systems I'm not going to need shut off, unlatch the door. That's standard procedure in small planes, because if the airframe becomes damaged on contact with the ground, you don't want that door jammed shut. Master switch and avionics are left on so that I could continue to talk to air traffic control in real life. However, Beyond ATC has no facility for you to work through an emergency with them. So the whole time the Beyond ATC controller is just wondering why I'm not complying with instructions, and there's really nothing I can tell him, so I stopped talking to him. I should have come back to shutting off the master switch before touchdown, but that never actually happened. I'm not sure. There's just really no good options here. During this phase of flight here, I'm pretty happy with the decisions I made. Most of it I narrated for you in real time in the previous run-through, but I'll expand on it here. This was a very hot Sunday afternoon in Southern California. The beach in Santa Barbara would have been packed. It's an attractive landing place, except that there would have been hundreds of people there, and a lot of people would have got hurt. So in reality, it's not an option. Another option was, you can see me looking at a clearing on the hill just above the water there. And I was kind of thinking about, could I put it there? But the terrain is rugged enough where I'm pretty sure that would have just been a fatal decision regardless. Maybe not, but it didn't make sense to me in the moment, so that's not where I landed. It's about this time I'm starting to realize that due to the way the buildup is around Santa Barbara, it's all residential. The seaside is cliffs. The only thing that I might have done differently in retrospect is gone toward the main beach area that's off to the right and landed offshore there, because there would have been more people present, a better opportunity for rescue. Where we ended up setting down, I'm not sure that it would have been easy for anybody to get to us. So all of the mistakes and decisions have been made, and we're committed to our landing here. My idea is to land just offshore, and to hopefully get out of the plane and be able to swim ashore. The Whether or not that would have happened, who knows? But for now, I return you to Kurt in the plane to explain to you what that big noise was and what happened next. Close to shore as we reasonably can. That went badly. My yoke, I was. Well, that didn't go well. What happened was I was pulling back so hard on my yoke. It's got a pretty heavy spring in it, and I'm trying to flare it as hard, just to really bleed the speed off there at the end, and the yoke pulled right off my desk. Oh well. So there you go, day one of traffic and beyond ATC. Um, you can't, I mean, other than a couple little flaws, you can't fault it too much. The engine failure and the subsequent crash were my fault, and it goofed the visual. But what are you going to do? So they need to look at that, and I need to make sure my yoke is attached better and be a little more familiar with my engine out procedures. Clearly. Anyways, well, that was fun. And just one item in closing. I did say at the beginning that the thing that caused it to escalate from just a ditch to fatal was due to a hardware failure on my side, but I decided it was a learning experience anyways. I thought I should explain that because most of you are probably thinking nobody's yoke would come off their desk in a real flight, and that's absolutely true. But there have been cases of flights ending badly because the handle came off the yoke. So I considered this to basically be that. I was pulling on the yoke pretty hard and off it popped, basically. So that's my reason for saying that, and for saying that it's a learning experience, and that checking out your airplane sometimes can include just the stuff on your desk. Anyways, if you found this entertaining, informative, or otherwise worth your time, please give it a like, consider subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for stopping by.